We are coming. We do not forgive, and we never forget. It is true, Mina whispered. Earth is fighting back. Toke stared at the small screen for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaking. I never thought I would live to see this day. I never thought anyone would stand against the hegemony. We have been standing, Mina said. We have just been standing in silence, waiting. She looked around at the other workers gathered in the darkness. Humans and aliens together, united by their suffering. She saw something changing in their eyes. The hopelessness was fading. Something else was taking its place. If Earth can stand, Toke said slowly, then perhaps others can too. Mina nodded. That is what they want. The message was not just for the hegemony. It was for us. For all of us. Every slave, every conquered people, every species that has been told they are too weak to fight. She looked at the old alien beside her, and for the first time since she was taken from Earth, she smiled. They are showing us that resistance is possible. They are giving us permission to hope. The same scene played out across the galaxy. On factory worlds and agricultural colonies, on prison moons and labor camps, the conquered peoples watched the human message and felt something stir inside them. For centuries, they had been told that the hegemony was unbeatable. They had been told that resistance was futile. They had been told that their only choice was submission or death. But now, a single small planet had stood up and said no. A single primitive species had looked at the greatest empire in the galaxy and declared war god, and if they could do it, perhaps others could too. The hegemony commanders noticed the change almost immediately. Reports began flooding in from occupied worlds. Workers were slower to obey orders. Slaves were meeting in secret groups. Strange symbols were appearing on walls. The symbols were different on each world, but they all meant the same thing. Resistance. On Veltos Prime, General Cories read the reports with growing concern. He had fought many wars, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans were not just attacking with ships and weapons. They were attacking with ideas. They were showing the galaxy that the hegemony could be challenged. And that idea, once planted, was almost impossible to destroy. We are not just facing a rebellion, Cories told the council. We are facing a revolution. And if we do not stop it quickly, it will spread to every corner of the empire. High Counselor Wren dismissed his concerns with a wave of his hand. Crush the humans. The others will fall back into line. But Cories was not so sure. He had seen revolutions before. He knew how they started and how they spread. And he knew that the hardest ones to stop were the ones driven not by strategy, but by hope. The humans had given the galaxy hope. And hope, once given, could not easily be taken away. The 7 days ended exactly on schedule. Not a minute early. Not a minute late. The hegemony had hoped the humans were bluffing. They were wrong. Commander Teo stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Victory, watching the stars streak past as his fleet moved through space at speeds the hegemony had told humans were impossible. Around him, 40 warships flew in perfect formation. Each one was crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Each one was armed with weapons that had been designed over 3 centuries of careful, patient work. Sir, we are approaching the Nexus 7 station, reported his first officer, a young woman named Su-Min. The hegemony fleet is in defensive position. 42 ships. Tai-Ho studied the tactical display. The hegemony commanders had positioned their fleet exactly where Earth's intelligence reports said they would. The station itself was heavily fortified, with defensive platforms and shield generators that could withstand bombardment for hours. It had protected the main trade route to Earth for 200 years. The hegemony considered it unbreakable. Signal all ships, Tai-Ho said calmly. Begin Phase 1. The first wave of human missiles launched in perfect silence. They were small, almost invisible against the darkness of space. The hegemony sensors did not detect them until it was too late. The missiles did not aim for the enemy ships. They aimed for the shield generators. The explosions were beautiful and terrible. Bright flashes of light tore through the station's defenses, and the protective shields flickered and died. In the command center of the hegemony fleet, admirals screamed orders at their crews. But their reactions were slow. They had never faced an enemy who knew their systems as well as the humans did. Phase 2, Tejo commanded. All ships engage. The human fleet surged forward. Captain Bora commanded the Indomitable, one of the new Fury-class destroyers that had been built in the secret ocean shipyards. Her crew was young, most of them born under occupation, raised on stories of a free Earth they had never seen. Now they would fight to make those stories real. "Weapons ready," reported her weapons officer, a tall man named Day. His hands moved across the control panels with practiced ease. He had trained for this moment since he was 16 years old. Targets locked. "Fire," Bora ordered. The Indomitable's main guns spoke with a voice of thunder and light. Beams of energy sliced through the darkness, striking hegemony ships with devastating accuracy. Day had studied enemy ship designs for years. He knew exactly where to aim. He knew every weakness, every vulnerable point, every flaw in their armor. The first hegemony cruiser broke apart in a spray of fire and debris. Then another. Then another. The enemy fleet tried to respond. Their weapons were powerful, and they still outnumbered the humans. But the human ships moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. They dodged incoming fire. They anticipated enemy maneuvers. They fought as if they could read their opponent's minds. In 11 minutes, the battle was over. The Nexus 7 station floated dead in space, its weapons silent, its defenders scattered or destroyed. Commander Tejo looked at the wreckage and felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. This was just the beginning. But the war was not only fought in space. On distant worlds, human soldiers were landing to begin a different kind of battle. Lieutenant Jin led a ground team to Kethros 3, a planet covered in massive industrial complexes where millions of slaves worked producing goods for the hegemony. The landing was dangerous. Enemy ground forces were waiting. But Jin and his soldiers had trained for exactly this situation. They moved through the facility like ghosts, silent and deadly. The hegemony guards were not prepared for humans who fought back. For 300 years, they had only known humans as workers, as slaves, as property. The idea of humans as warriors was something they had forgotten. Jin's team reached the main holding area in less than an hour. The guards were dead or captured. The security systems were disabled. And now came the moment Jin had dreamed about since he was a child. He pressed the control panel, and the doors to the slave quarters slid open. Inside were thousands of people. Humans who had been taken from Earth years, or even decades ago. Many were old now, their bodies broken by hard labor. Many were young, born in captivity, who had never seen blue sky or breathed free air. They looked at Jin and his soldiers with eyes that had forgotten how to hope. Jin removed his helmet so they could see his face, so they could see that he was human, like them. "I am Lieutenant Jin of the United Earth Republic," he said. His voice was steady, but inside his heart was pounding. "Earth has not forgotten you. We have come to bring you home." For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then an old man near the front of the crowd stepped forward. His back was bent from years of hard work. His hands were rough and scarred. But his eyes were suddenly alive with something that had been dead for a long time. "You came," the old man whispered. "They told us Earth had abandoned us. They told us no one would ever come. They lied, Jin said. Earth was preparing. Earth was waiting. Earth was building an army to set you free. The old man fell to his knees and wept. Others joined him. Tears flowed freely, tears of relief and joy and hope. Some reached out to touch the soldiers, as if to make sure they were real. Jin knelt beside the old man and put a hand on his shoulder. "What is your name?" "Sung-ho," the old man said through his tears. "My name is Sung-ho. I was taken from Bizen when I was 22 years old. That was 53 years ago." "Sung-ho," Jin said gently, "you are free now. You are all free." The liberation of Kethros III was broadcast across the galaxy. Images of human soldiers opening slave quarters, of families reunited, of chains being broken. The message was clear. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were freeing everyone the hegemony had enslaved, and they were not alone. On world after world, something unexpected began to happen. When human soldiers arrived to liberate labor camps, they found that the non-human slaves had already started fighting back. Armed with stolen weapons and improvised tools, they had risen against their guards. They had heard Earth's message. They had seen the videos of liberation. And they had decided that if the humans could fight, so could they. The revolution that General Corys had feared was beginning. And it was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. Commander Te'o received reports from across hegemony space. Human fleets were winning battle after battle. Liberation forces were freeing millions of slaves. And everywhere they went, the freed. The lights of the orbital station flickered as another hegemony warship passed by the observation window. Commander Te'o stood with his hands behind his back, watching the massive alien vessel move through the darkness of space like a metal whale swimming through an ocean of stars. He had seen these ships his entire life. Everyone on Earth had. They were a constant reminder of who truly controlled humanity's fate. 300 years ago, the aliens came. They called themselves the Galactic Hegemony, a coalition of 12 ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. When their ships appeared in Earth's sky, humanity had tried to fight. That war lasted only 6 weeks. Human weapons were like toys against hegemony technology. Millions died. Cities burned. And when it was over, Earth became a colony. For 3 centuries, the hegemony took what they wanted. They took Earth's resources. They took Earth's land. And worst of all, they took Earth's people. Every year, ships would come and collect humans for labor on distant worlds. Families were torn apart. Children were separated from parents. The hegemony saw humans as useful workers, nothing more. Strong enough to survive harsh conditions, smart enough to follow orders, but too weak and divided to ever be a threat. Taiho remembered the day his older sister was taken. He was only 8 years old. She was 16. The selection officers pointed at her, and soldiers dragged her away while their mother screamed and begged. That was 25 years ago. He never saw his sister again. He never forgot that day. The door behind him opened with a soft hiss. Te'o turned to see Ambassador Yuna walking toward him. Her face was pale, and her eyes showed a weariness that came from more than just physical exhaustion. She had just returned from the Hegemony Council on Veltos Prime, the capital world of the alien empire. Te'o knew immediately that the news was bad. What did they say? He asked. Yuna stopped beside him and looked out at the alien ships. There were more of them now than he had ever seen. Dozens of dreadnoughts, hundreds of smaller cruisers, all gathering near Jupiter like wolves circling wounded prey. They gave us an ultimatum, she said quietly. We have 7 days to surrender 60% of Earth's population for redistribution across hegemony worlds. Te'o felt his blood turn cold. 60%? That is billions of people. Yes. Yuna's voice was barely a whisper. They say our population has grown too large. They say we are consuming too many resources. They want to spread us across their empire as permanent labor forces. And if we refuse? Yuna finally looked at him. Her eyes were filled with something he had never seen in her before. It was not fear. It was anger. Deep, earning anger that had been building for years. If we refuse, they will destroy Earth completely. They showed me the weapons they would use. They said it would take less than 1 hour to turn our planet into dust. Tae-ho turned back to the window. The alien ships continued their slow patrol, unaware or uncaring that they were being watched. For 300 years, humanity had submitted. They had bowed their heads and accepted their fate. They had told themselves that survival was more important than pride. But this demand was different. This was not just oppression. This was the end of humanity as a free people. Even slaves have hope. But 60% taken, scattered across 1,000 worlds, never to return, that was extinction in slow motion. The Emergency Council is meeting in 1 hour, Yuna said. President Hana has summoned every world leader, every military commander, every advisor. She wants to decide our response together. What response can we give? Tae-ho asked bitterly. We have no fleet that can match theirs. No weapons that can hurt them. 300 years of occupation have made sure of that. Yuna was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice so low that Tae-ho almost did not hear her. Are you sure about that? Before he could ask what she meant, she turned and walked away. The council chamber was deep underground, hidden beneath the mountains of what was once called Korea. President Hana sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by holographic displays showing the faces of leaders from every nation on Earth. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry. Some looked defeated before the discussion even began. Defense Minister Seok was the first to speak. He was an old man with white hair and a face carved by decades of hard living. His grandfather had fought in the First Contact War. His father had died in a labor camp on an alien world. Seok himself had spent his entire career preparing for a day he never truly believed would come. They have given us an impossible choice, Seok said, his voice rough with emotion. Submit and watch our people scattered like seeds in the wind. Refuse and watch our world burn. Either way, humanity ends. There must be another way, said the representative from Africa. Perhaps we can negotiate. Perhaps we can offer them something else. We have nothing they want except our bodies, Seok replied. We are livestock to them. You do not negotiate with cattle. The arguments continued for hours. Some wanted to surrender. They said that at least 40% of humanity would survive. Others wanted to fight, even knowing it was hopeless. They said it was better to die free than live as slaves. The voices grew louder and angrier until President Hana finally raised her hand. The room fell silent. Hana was a small woman, but her presence filled every corner of the chamber. She had been president for only 3 years, but in that time, she had earned the respect of everyone on Earth. She was calm when others panicked. She was strong when others faltered. And she carried a secret that only a handful of people knew. She reached into her pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a young woman standing in front of a burning city, her face covered in ash and blood, her eyes defiant even in defeat. It was her grandmother, taken on the last day of the First Contact War. My grandmother survived the war, Hana said softly. She watched her family die. She watched her world fall. But she never stopped believing that one day humanity would rise again. She told me something before she died. She said that the greatest weapon is not a gun or a bomb. The greatest weapon is patience. She looked around the room at all the frightened, angry, hopeless faces. For 300 years, We have been patient. We have watched. We have learned. We have prepared. The hegemony believes we are weak because we submitted. They believe we are divided because we pretended to be. They believe we are helpless because we wanted them to believe it. President Hanna stood up slowly. Prepare the broadcast systems. Open every channel, every frequency, every network across the galaxy. It is time for the hegemony to learn the truth about humanity. She looked out at the faces of Earth's leaders, and for the first time in 300 years, they saw something in their president's eyes that they had forgotten existed. Hope. They wanted our answer. Let us give them one they will never forget. Admiral June stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Veltos, watching the blue and green planet called Earth spinning slowly in the distance. He had commanded the hegemony's Third Fleet for 40 years. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had never once felt afraid of any species the hegemony had conquered. Until today, that the transmission had come without warning. It cut through every security protocol, every encryption barrier, every firewall that protected hegemony communications. One moment, his screens showed routine reports. The next moment, every display on every ship in his fleet showed the same image. A human woman with dark hair and calm eyes, sitting in a chair, looking directly at him as if she could see through the screen and into his soul. To the galactic hegemony and all who watch in silence, the woman began. Her voice was steady and clear. There was no fear in it, no desperation, just cold, absolute certainty. You have given us an ultimatum. Now receive ours. Admiral June leaned forward in his command chair. Around him, his officers had stopped working. Every alien on the bridge was staring at their screens, frozen in shock. For 300 years, you called us weak, the human continued. You said we were disorganized. You said we were divided. You said we were incapable of unity. You said we would never be a threat. She paused and smiled slightly. You were right, once. The image changed. Instead of the woman, the screens now showed something that made Admiral June's blood freeze in his veins. It was a shipyard, a massive construction facility hidden beneath the ocean of Earth. And inside, it were ships. Human ships. Thousands of them. Vessels built with technology that looked nothing like the primitive machines humans were supposed to have. You took our people for labor, the woman's voice continued over the images. They learned your technology. They memorized your blueprints. They studied your weapons. And they sent everything they learned back to Earth. The images kept changing. Underground factories producing weapons. Training facilities hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. Secret bases buried deep in mountains and beneath frozen wastelands. All of it built over 300 years, piece by piece, without the hegemony ever knowing. You occupied our planet, the woman said. You placed your soldiers on our soil. You watched us constantly. But you only watched what we wanted you to see. Beneath your feet, we were building. Behind your backs, we were planning. In the silence of our submission, we were preparing. Admiral June finally found his voice. Get me high command immediately. Now. But the communication officers were shaking their heads. Sir, our systems are locked. We cannot send or receive anything. Only this transmission is coming through. The woman's face returned to the screen. Her expression had changed. The calm was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Something that Admiral June recognized from his long career fighting wars across the galaxy. It was the look of someone who had already won and was simply informing their enemy of the fact. You underestimated something about humans, she said. You thought that because we were weak, we would stay weak. You thought that because we were divided, we could never unite. You thought that because we submitted, We had accepted our fate. She shook her head slowly. You were wrong about all of it. Humans are not strong because of our bodies. We are not powerful because of our weapons. We are dangerous because of one simple thing. We remember. We remember every person you took from us. We remember every family you destroyed. We remember every humiliation, every cruelty, every injustice. And we have spent 300 years preparing our response. The images appeared again. This time they showed something different. Maps. Detailed maps of every hegemony command station, every supply line, every military base, every patrol route. Information that should have been impossible for any conquered species to obtain. Secrets that had been gathered over centuries by human slaves working in hegemony facilities across the galaxy. We know your weaknesses, the woman said. We know your schedules. We know your codes. We know the name of every officer in your fleet. We know the location of your families. Admiral June felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity formally declares war on the galactic hegemony, the woman announced. Her voice was not angry. It was not desperate. It was simply final, like a judge reading a sentence. We do not declare this war for survival. We do not declare it for negotiation. We declare it for one purpose and one purpose only. Revenge. You have 7 days. The same 7 days you gave us. Use them well. Pray to whatever gods you believe in. Say goodbye to those you love. Because when those 7 days end, we are coming. And we will not stop until every chain is broken. Until every slave is free. Until every wrong is answered. The woman leaned forward, and for a moment, it felt like she was speaking directly to Admiral June. You should have killed us when you had the chance. You should have destroyed our planet completely. You should have wiped out every last human being in the galaxy. But you did not. You let us live because we were useful. You let us survive because we were profitable. That was your mistake. We are not livestock. We are not workers. We are not your property. We are human beings. And human beings do not forgive. Human beings do not forget. Human beings remember. For 300 years, we have been remembering. Now it is time for you to learn what that means. The final image showed the woman standing up, surrounded by officers in military uniforms that no one in the hegemony had ever seen before. Behind them, through a large window, the stars were visible. And among those stars, lights were moving. Ships, thousands of ships, all heading toward hegemony space. This is President Hana of the United Earth Republic. This is our final message to the galactic hegemony. We are coming. We do not forgive. And we never, ever forget. The transmission ended. For a long moment, there was complete silence on the bridge of the Pride of Veltos. Admiral June sat motionless in his chair, staring at the blank screen. In 40 years of command, he had never felt real fear. He felt it now. Finally, his first officer spoke. "Sir, what do we do?" Admiral June looked out the window at the distant blue planet. It looked so small, so harmless, so weak. But he knew now that everything he had believed about that world was a lie. "We prepare for war," he said quietly. "And we pray that we are strong enough to survive what is coming." He was not sure they would be the message from Earth, spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every species, every world, every space station had seen or heard about the human declaration of war. For most, it was the most shocking news they had ever received. A conquered species threatening the hegemony was unthinkable. It was like watching an insect challenge a giant. Impossible. Ridiculous. And yet the images were real. The ships were real. The threat was real. On Veltos Prime, the capital world of the hegemony, the Council of 12 met in emergency session. The chamber was ancient, built from stone quarried from mountains that had existed before humans had learned to use fire. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing news feeds and military reports from across the Empire. Every screen showed the same thing. Chaos. High Counselor Wren stood at the center of the chamber, his tall gray body trembling with rage. He had ruled the council for 60 years. He had overseen the conquest of 100 worlds. No species had ever dared to challenge him directly. Until now. "This is madness," he shouted, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. "One primitive planet threatens the greatest empire in galactic history? They are insects, vermin. We crushed them once. We will crush them again. Send every fleet we have. Burn their world to ash and scatter the ashes across the void." But the other counselors were not so confident. They had seen the same images Wren had seen. They knew what those hidden shipyards meant. General Cories, the supreme commander of all hegemony military forces, stepped forward. He was old even by the standards of his long-lived species, and he had fought more wars than he could count. He had earned his position through victories, not politics. And he knew better than anyone how dangerous an underestimated enemy could be. "High Counselor," Cories said carefully, "we have confirmed the existence of the facilities shown in the transmission. Our scouts report that the humans have constructed over 10,000 warships in secret. Their weapons use technology that we do not fully understand. Some of it appears to be based on our own designs, but modified in ways our scientists have never considered." "Impossible," Wren snapped. "How could primitives improve upon our technology?" "They had 300 years to study it," Cories replied. 300 years of human workers in our factories, our shipyards, our research facilities. We considered them too stupid to be a threat. We were wrong." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the counselors began to understand the size of the mistake they had made. Far from Beltos Prime, on the other side of the galaxy, the news reached worlds that had no love for the hegemony. These were the conquered peoples, the subjugated species, the races that had been ground beneath the Empire's boot for centuries. They had no voice in galactic affairs. They had no power to resist. They had long ago accepted that their fate was to serve and suffer until their species died out completely. But now, watching the human message, they felt something they had forgotten was possible. Hope. On the mining world of Draven 4, thousands of slaves worked in deep underground tunnels, digging precious metals that would be shipped to hegemony core worlds. The air was thick with dust. The heat was unbearable. Many workers died every day from exhaustion, accidents, or the casual cruelty of their overseers. In one of the deeper tunnels, a group of workers gathered around a small data pad. It had been smuggled in at great risk. Anyone caught with unauthorized technology would be executed immediately. But the message it contained was worth the danger. Mina held the data pad carefully. She was human, one of thousands who had been taken from Earth when she was just a child. She barely remembered her home world. Her earliest memories were of the mines, the darkness, the endless work. But she had never stopped believing that somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. "Is it true?" asked a voice beside her. It belonged to an old alien with gray skin and tired eyes. His name was Toke. He had been a slave for over 100 years. His entire family had died in the mines. He had nothing left except the small hope that someday, somehow, things would change. Mina played the message again. President Hana's words filled the small tunnel. Quiet but clear. Peoples were joining the fight. "We are not just an army anymore," Tejo said quietly, looking at the tactical display showing friendly symbols appearing across the galaxy. "We are a movement." His first officer, Su Min, nodded. "What are your orders, sir?" Tuho looked at the distant stars and thought of his sister, taken so many years ago. He hoped she was still alive somewhere. He hoped she would hear the news. He hoped she would know that her little brother had never stopped fighting for her. "We continue," he said. "We do not stop until every chain is broken, until every slave is free, until the hegemony learns what happens when you underestimate humanity." The war had begun, and humanity intended to finish it. 6 months had passed since Earth declared war. In that time, the galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The hegemony was falling. Not slowly, not gradually, but in a great collapse that no one had thought possible. Human fleets had destroyed over half of their military forces. Liberation armies had freed billions of slaves across hundreds of worlds. And the conquered peoples of the galaxy had risen up in numbers that overwhelmed even the most optimistic predictions. Admiral Wu stood on the bridge of the combined fleet flagship, watching the planet Veltos Prime grow larger in the viewscreen. This was the heart of the hegemony, the capital world where the Council of 12 had ruled for 10,000 years. The place where decisions had been made that had caused more suffering than any human could truly understand. Today, it would fall. "All fleet elements report ready," announced his communications officer. "Liberation forces confirm ground positions secured. The path to the council chamber is clear." Wu nodded slowly. He was an old man now, older than he had ever expected to live. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, knowing it might never come. But it had come. Against all odds, against all expectations, humanity had won. "Signal President Hana," he said. "Tell her we are ready for her arrival." The presidential shuttle landed in the great plaza before the council chamber, surrounded by soldiers from a dozen different species. Human Marines stood shoulder to shoulder with alien warriors who had once been slaves. They wore different uniforms and carried different weapons, but they all served the same cause. Freedom. President Hana stepped out of the shuttle and looked up at the ancient building before her. It was massive, built to intimidate, designed to make anyone who approached feel small and powerless. But she did not feel small. She felt the weight of 300 years of history pressing against her back, pushing her forward. Commander Teho was waiting for her at the entrance. He had aged during the war. His hair was grayer now, and there were new lines on his face. But his eyes were the same, determined, unbroken, alive with a fire that had never stopped, burning since the day his sister was taken. "Madam President," he said, saluting, "the council chamber is secured. High Counselor Wren and the surviving council members are waiting inside. Any resistance?" Hannah asked. "Some. Most of the hegemony forces surrendered once they realized the war was lost. Others fought to the end." Teho paused. "We gave them the choice. That is more than they ever gave us." Hannah nodded and began walking toward the entrance. Teho fell into step beside her, along with Admiral Wu and Ambassador Yuna. Together, they entered the building that had been the seat of galactic tyranny for longer than human civilization had existed. The council chamber was vast, with ceilings that stretched toward the sky and walls covered in ancient symbols and carvings. Holographic displays still flickered along the walls, now showing images of human victories and liberated worlds. In the center of the chamber, surrounded by armed guards, stood High Counselor Wren. He was older than Hannah had imagined. His gray skin hung loose on his thin frame, and his once proud posture had crumbled into defeat. But his eyes still burned with hatred as he watched the humans approach. "So," Wren said, his voice thick with contempt, "the insects have conquered the giants. You must be very proud." Hannah stopped a few meters away from him and studied his face. She searched for some trace of understanding, some acknowledgement of the suffering his empire had caused. She found nothing but arrogance and spite. "We did not conquer you," she said calmly. "We liberated ourselves, and everyone else you enslaved." Ren laughed bitterly. "You think this changes anything? The hegemony has ruled for 10,000 years. We have risen from defeat before. We will rise again. Your little rebellion will be forgotten. Your species will fade into history. We are eternal." "You are wrong," Hannah replied, "and I will tell you why." She gestured to the guards, and they stepped aside to allow others to enter the chamber. One by one, representatives of 47 different species walked through the doors. Some were tall and strong. Others were small and fragile. Some had scales, others had fur, others had features that human eyes could barely comprehend. But they all had one thing in common. They were free. "These are the peoples you enslaved," Hannah said. "These are the species you crushed beneath your feet. These are the voices you silenced for thousands of years. Today, they speak. Today, they stand beside us. Not as subjects, not as servants, as equals, as allies, as friends." Ren looked at the gathering assembly with something that might have been fear. "You cannot maintain this coalition. Different species have different interests. They will turn on each other. They will turn on you." "Perhaps," Hannah admitted, "perhaps there will be conflicts in the future. Perhaps we will disagree. But we have learned something that you never understood. We have learned that unity built on oppression is fragile. Unity built on shared suffering, on mutual respect, on common hope. That unity is stronger than any empire." She stepped closer to Ren until she was looking directly into his eyes. "You taught the galaxy that the only way to survive was through domination. That the strong must crush the weak. That mercy was foolishness and compassion was weakness." She shook her head slowly. "We taught them something different. We taught them that even the smallest voice, if it refuses to be silent, can become a roar. We taught them that resistance is never futile. We taught them that hope is the most powerful weapon in the universe." Hannah turned away from Ren and addressed the gathered representatives. "Today marks the end of the galactic hegemony, but it also marks the beginning of something new. A galaxy where no species is considered lesser, where no people are born into slavery, where the strong do not prey upon the weak. It will not be easy. We have much work ahead of us, but we will do it together." She looked back at Ren one final time. "Your empire is over. Your power is gone. But we will not execute you. We will not torture you. We will not do to you what you did to billions across the galaxy. Instead, you will live. You will watch as the galaxy you ruled becomes something better than you ever allowed it to be. That is your punishment. That is your lesson." The final transmission went out across all known space. President Hannah stood before the cameras, the freed peoples of the galaxy standing behind her. "To every world that watched us suffer and did nothing, we understand. Fear is a powerful chain. To every world that suffered beside us, your chains are broken. Rise. To the hegemony and those who would rebuild it, remember this day. Remember what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness, patience for submission, and silence for surrender." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of 300 years of human endurance. Humanity remembers everything, and humanity has a very long memory. But we also know that the future matters more than the past. We choose to build rather than destroy. We choose to heal rather than wound. We choose hope over hatred. This is the final message of the United Earth Republic. The war is over. The rebuilding begins, and the galaxy will never be the same again. Years later, people would ask how humanity had done it, how a small, primitive species had overthrown the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. The answer was always the same. They had remembered. They had prepared. They had hoped. And when the time came, they had shown the universe that even in the darkest night, even under the heaviest chains, the human spirit could never truly be broken. The stars belonged to everyone now, and they always would.